Disciple should always try to train and control his heart. That is duty of disciples. So no matter how excellent the teacher is, if the student doesn't study, then there is no use. So in order to study, they also train and they also scold them. But if they do not have the sense of studying, like in olden times, if they just carried books on an empty books, then that does not have meaning. So a disciple, if he doesn't study hard, for me, I think it's very important. Prize on excellence is also good, but prize on his diligence is more important in my point of view. A teacher who trains and a student who learns hard, they should be able to meet in a same place in a same time. That condition should be given. If the student does not try to study hard and if does not attend the lessons hard, then there's no use. So a disciple should always try hard in order to learn. Then only the teachers will also have a sense of happiness and also sense of contentment in teaching. Sometimes after 5 or 10 years of teaching, and if they say something that is not useful, or if they say something that is irrelevant, then sometimes teachers get a thought. Sometimes the thought, if they start having doubts on their way of teaching, or if they are teaching properly. So a student, when he is learning like this, when we are conversing or when we are communicating, those who study, we can have a communication on the lessons. If you keep having other thoughts or extra thoughts, that means you're not trying hard enough in order to keep up with your lessons. And also, it's very difficult to teach those who does not change. Like Kadampa Geshe, Geshe are those who have very good knowledge on Tripikata. In Buddhism, the most important thing is that you should have a clear knowledge of Buddha's teaching and also scholars. Kadampa Geshes also suggests that you should have both script and your heart together. You should try to make the law and also your heart come as one. Your heart and Buddha's teachings or Buddha's word should not go in an opposite direction. There could be some reasons. One is because you are negligent. And those people who are negligent, they are not aware that they are negligent. So that's why they do something that is irrelevant. That's why they think they are doing the right thing, or they are not even able to make out if they are doing the wrong thing. So if you do not learn, then you cannot do it. In the contradiction behind the contradiction in Korean Buddhism is the fact that you can just get enlightenment, but how can you get enlightenment if you are not aware? Going straight to the enlightenment does not mean you gain enlightenment directly, but that means you go directly to the path of enlightenment. So my thoughts and Buddha's teaching and my behavior and my speeches, they should be going in one direction. So when you're listening in this hall, then you understand. But when you go out, then you speak the opposite, and you have a different behavior. And if your speeches are opposite to what Buddha says, throughout 1 week, you do exactly the opposite that Buddha has taught you. But then when you enter into this classroom, then it's like olden times when you carry your bag right after study, you pack your bags, and when you get home, then you will throw the book on the in the living hall, and when it's about time to go to school, then you realize, oh, I haven't done my homework. Oh, this time I'll just get one beating and I will just let it go. This if you continue in this way, then it is improper. So your bell ring is being broadcasted all over Korea and all over the world. So Buddha's teachings, your thought, Buddha's teachings, my thought, and my behavior, you should be able to inspect how uniform they are. Then you will be able to know if you're studying well or if you're not studying properly. So I tell you again and again, like Shantideva, if you have a understanding or if you have a realization that your understanding of Buddha's teachings and also your behavior speeches, they are not regressing as per the Buddha's teaching, then you are studying hard. But if you say, oh, I had difficulty living my life, earning bread for my family, then like for these 5 years, since I was busy raising my family life, you often came into my dream during those 5 years. But I tell him I didn't go. But and I keep coming in his dreams. So and I asked him, so what did I do in your dream? And he said, you scolded me even in my dream because you don't come to the teachings. But you should not only think about those messengers or think about those teachers who convey the message. The act of learning disappears, but it's a proof that you are regressing back to your daily life and you are not progressing towards your study. It should be the way that I am studying hard, I'm studying well enough. So why are you not teaching me as hard as I am learning? This should be the way that everything goes. So you should be able to melt those two into one, Buddha's teaching and also your heart. When you say like do not kill, not killing is very, very, very difficult. But later, as it progresses, When you say like Dalai Lama doesn't kill, he says it's very difficult. Like even now, he has not been able to control mosquito bites well. So when mosquito bites, he just hits it unconsciously and mosquito dies. Now, what happens if you're able to do all that? Like sometimes, like you won't be even able to throw hot water down the sink because the microorganisms living in sink will die due to hot water. You will have that kind of thoughts too. So first, when you say don't kill, we understand in the way that do not kill other human and do not kill other animals. But when it gets deeper, when the study gets deeper, then you start thinking about those two. There was a monk I know, and he adheres to all of them, and he listens to all these practices. But one day he was walking down the farm, and there was a leech, and even to his eyes, the leech seemed very, very, very thin. So he just let leech suck his blood, and if you keep studying or if you keep practicing, then you'll be able to do that. And he was able to fill Leech's stomach and send him away. But from our opinion, we feel Leech is very disgusting and you want to throw it away. But when you say the Buddha's teaching laws, then if you're able to practice every single little things, then it gets deeper. If your intellectual understanding and aesthetic practice is being far away, then you're missing a lot of things. If they're going in, if they're going through different direction, then it's not correct. Even in Buddhist scholars, we write learning in this way in Chinese. In Buddhism, when you say suenja or learning or person who learns, it means it's someone who does practices ascetic practices. You should be able to do them together, studying and praying at the same time. I told those university professors before. They were talking about how often they go other places to teach, and they were talking about six parameters and how you should have compassion, but they do not practice those compassion at all. They do not donate at all. What is it? It's a fertilizer for a healthy life. When you take drawings as an example, if you drew well, but if you think you're not drawing well nowadays, then what is it? Drawing is just it's a phenomenon. Somewhat my drawing has become very, very boring nowadays. It has become like a food without salt. There are also some people who invest in drawings, and because of because of all these drawings, how expensive they bought, and they sell it and they use it as a means of bribery, and they get caught in the police. Even in those times when they go and to auctioning, they raise their fingers in this way. But look at the things. I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about those who donate things and let them for auction, but I'm but those who, when others suffer and when things go to auctioning because they failed, and those people who try to buy those properties in a cheap amount and try to resell them, I'm referring to those. So a lot of people nowadays misunderstanding this thing called intelligence. If I have intelligence, they claim that they have enlightenment. There's someone in Busan. So he says that if you read more, then you gain enlightenment. And if he ever comes to my side, then I would like to teach him a lesson.
그래서 수행은 많은 부분을 놓치고 좋은 결과를 맺을 수 없을 것이라고 말합니다. 정신적 수행의 과정에서는 언제나 스스로를 완전히
A spiritual aesthetic practice, in this process, you should always inspect yourself.
그 스스로를 살핀다, 성찰한다는 얘기는 그건 유교에서 잘 하고 성찰이라고 해요. 성찰이라고.
When you say
바로 알아챈다. 말 못하는 것을 알아채고.
When you say self-realization, in Buddhism we say awareness that it's correct. They usually use the term self-realization a lot in Confucianism, but in Buddhism it's more like knowing that you are wrong, knowing that you are wrong in the instance. That's the fact I like about Buddhism. If something goes wrong, I do some act without knowledge, and then I realize, oh, that was wrong. You should be able to do that. Aesthetic practice is more like you should listen to those kind of teachings often, and you should look into yourself, and even when you're looking in the mirror, when you look in the mirror and think, oh, I have so many gray hairs, what have I done until I got so many gray hairs? That's the way. But if you think that, oh, I have so many gray hairs, I should color them, that is not a thought of aesthetic practice. It's not a thought of someone who does follow Buddha's teaching. Those people who can only look at mirror and come to that kind of conclusion is not someone who follows Buddha's teachings. You're not able to see your eyes, you're not able to see the color of your complexion. Even when you're just buying something, a small thing in a supermarket, you should be able to see if this is for others, if this is for someone else. With use of a mirror called law, Buddha's teaching, you should be able to reflect your wrong things and also virtue of yourself.
부처님 가르치신 법을 갖다 이두 가지 측면에서 그런 거야. 이 법에 대한 것은 법은 이제 부처님께서 가르치신 것은 다르마라 그래. 다르마 법이라 그래. 그러면 이제 우리가
Buddha's teaching is called Dharma.
부처님께서 가르치신 법을
Through this Dharma,
거울에 비춰보듯이
we
법을 갖다 내가 잘 알고 있으면
look at ourselves. If we have a proper understanding of Dharma, then we we know what wrong we have done and what we have to do in order to remove ourselves from agony and what leads to enlightenment. Other thing is the natural law. The natural law is a phenomenon in the nature. So when you see leaves falling, just as they fall, some of you might think that, oh, just as they fall, I might disappear one day. When you look at other people, maybe you should be able to think that one day in one life they were all your parents. What can I do in order to help them? So your hurt comes from the objects that you see. So all of your objects become your mirror. So it's important to know your wrong and right by looking at Buddha's teaching, but it's also important to know what is wrong and what is right. Looking at other objects. Teacher and disciple, you both should have motivation for others' wellness and
지금 내가 가르치는 것은 이 모든 분들이 이곳 등락했으면 좋겠다라는 그걸 기점 뭐 목표라고 가르칩니다.
even teachers should teach under the motive that he wants everyone's happiness. Even the disciple, by learning this, I will live my life for the benefit of all sentient beings. Both teacher and the student have the same thought. Both teacher and the student should have a permanent thought. Nowadays, even this thing called teaching, although we say the theory is teaching, a lot of others, they do not do a proper teaching. A lot of you, they try to collect or try to make a lot of people gather, and then you will have power, and that power leads to, it's almost like a people business. So how many believers in the temple, how many believers in the church? So even when you're doing election, when you want to become a mayor, if you do not come to our church, then you will fail from the you will not win the election. Now those kind of things are the basic problems. So whatever they say, if you listen with a clear consciousness, then you know that they are the wrong things. They try to gather people and they do not care by what means, and they even sell the great scholar named Buddha. Most of them try to gain personal selfishness. The existence of monasteries is for spread of Buddha's teachings, and a temple is a place where people meet in order to receive Buddha's teachings. Sometimes when I look at Buddha TV, the channel, sometimes I feel so horrendous. There are so many advertisements, and sometimes the advertisements, they also say, like, if you go into the biggest Buddha statue's stomach, what happens? The rock in that mountain looks similar to Buddha. In my opinion, there was only like a rock, but I don't understand how they can say something like the rock is like Buddha. It will be very weird if they say the stone can get enlightenment, but we cannot.
부처를 도를 보면서 참으로 부처님이 언뜻 보인다 그러면 그러면 그 사람은 참 신심이 되다 그러면 그런 소리
If the person is able to say that, like, I see Buddha even in rocks, then we can say that he's very spiritual. But if you say,
성장하면서 한 번만 왔다 가면 소원
oh, if you go somewhere once, then you get enlightenment, and all these wrong misunderstandings, they are not helpful. That is not a use of temple. There is just a touristic place, and your act in order to earn money.
사람들 돈 떨어뜨리고 하는 거 그거 주워 먹으려고 꼭 우리 옛날에 연못에 보면 연못에 꼭 우리나라 사람들은 연못에 그렇게 해놓으면 연못에다 가운데다 부처님상을 이렇게 하나 모셔놓으면 그냥 그따 또 저기 얹으면 아들 낳는다네 그러면 자꾸 그따 던져가지고
In olden times, sometimes when they say that, like, if you throw a coin that far, then you might be able to get son. And sometimes even people who is 80 years old, they throw the stones. Some say that's for their daughter-in-law, but that's not the case.
그래가지고 동전이 많이 던져지면 그냥 그거 가서 동전 건져가지고 또 이제 또 가서 뭐
So when there are like so many stones thrown, all these things.
우리나라 사람들 외국에 가서 뭐 이게 일본이고 저 뭐야 어디 저런 데 가서 보고 오는 게 꼭 그런 것만 보고 와가지고 언제
I don't know why, but most of our Korean people, they go and they are the only things that they see and they learn and they come back.
보리도 차제론 그 보리도 차제론은 게 쫑카파스님의 이제 그 저술입니다.
This path to enlightenment, which is also called Lamrim, is written by Tsongkhapa.
보리도 차제란 말이야. 이게 깨달음에 들어가는 차곡차곡 수행하는 그 순서 그런 뜻이에요.
That means steps to gain enlightenment. But Lamrim is a literal translation or literal way of attaining enlightenment. In Tibetan, we also refer as Lamrim. With strong compassion as motivation, where the teaching is not past, where teaching is getting lesson. Let us convey this message. This is our aspiration. When we say we are conveying the message of teaching, it doesn't mean we are trying to gain more people, but it means in areas where there is no Buddha's teaching, it's just that they do not know what is the way to escape from agony. So this doesn't mean you convey the message to them, and make them build temples, but it is actually teaching them the way to escape or remove themselves from the suffering. So, all the things about like Naranta arriving, and in Shilla, the Adona-san arriving, they say in the language of Shilla in olden times, they call this Ado. Someone with head whose head is like a baby. When you look at it now, they are not even Chinese, but they actually belong to those Middle Asia, where they're from Pakistan and Afghanistan and also Bhutan. So these people
인도 쪽에서 이렇게 동쪽으로 오면 동쪽으로 오다 끝이잖아요.
They came all the way from west,
여기까지
eastwards,
오는데
and Korea Celeste.
때문에 온 거라.
They cannot even speak our language, but how did they arrive? They came because of this, to preach Buddha's teachings. Even the monk Venerable Hyunjin, he went all the way. Even if the king told him not to go, he went to China, and whatever translation they received from China was too less. So, and also there were very small number of people who translated the script and conveyed the message, but the teaching also had a lot of gaps in between. So he went to the site and he brought all of them, he translated, and he spread them around. When we talk about this Tang University and so, when you talk about this Tang Dynasty and So Dynasty, I think it started from Hyunjang's name. Our Korean history begins with Wonhyo, Venerable Wonhyo. He's the one who awakened our spirits.
그래서 이게 그 동기는 뭐냐면 자비심이 동기야. 왜 그러냐면
So what is the motivation for this? What is the cause for it? That is compassion.
그냥 밥 빌어 먹고 나 이제 저번에 그 종편 방송에 그게 나는 자연인이다 하고 그 이제 보니까 어이구 저게 무슨 자연인이야.
Once in TV, I saw the TV program I Live in Nature. It seemed like he is not a person who lives in nature. He lives alone in the mountain, but he just goes around the whole mountain in order to find food. So he plants chilies and he makes pickles and he has to make bean paste. The whole day, for 365 days, he has to move in order to survive. It occurred to me, what's the point of living in nature or being a naturalist if he does not even practice as any virtuous deeds, but only look for things to eat the whole day? I wonder what is the difference between them. So you should not live life. If you should not live like that if you want to practice your virtuous deeds. Like you should have a sponsor if you want to go into a cave or go into a mountain in order to practice your asceticism. If your daily life becomes a burden for you, then you cannot really do a proper meditation. But I think that could also have your own personal satisfaction. Like living in a city, you get hurt, you get mental stress, and you get mentally ill. And I think if you go into mountain, then maybe you will have that kind of benefits. If you want to say I'm a naturalist, what do you have to do? Maybe you have to change your name to the nature. Tell me, what do you think? What are the ways to live like a person who only lives in nature? In order to live close to nature, you should be away from greed. If you are greedy, you can never live in the nature.
그거는 그러니까 이제 그걸 잘 알아야 돼. 먹을 걸 챙기는 것 같다. 그러니까 스님들 또 기준을 어디다 두느냐면 비축하지 말라 그럽니다. 비축하려고.
So even for the things to eat, monks sometimes they say you should not store food to eat. That's why a lot of monks they asked for food and ate.
내가 옷을 잘
If you
입고
do not have
멋지겠다고
greediness,
욕심이 없으면
then you can live
욕심이 없어서 화장도 안
naturally.
하고 자연스러운 얼굴이 되겠지.
If you do not have a greediness in order to look pretty, then you will not look for clothes to wear and you will not wear makeup. But if you are greedy, then if you're greedy to look pretty, then even if you look for the whole day in the shopping centers, you'll only find one jacket.
이게 이제
And also, in the path to enlightenment,
쇠락해져 가는 거.
where the law becomes a little, where the law disappears a little, like in Korea for 1,600 years, Buddha's teaching has been passed down, but it was a time during the end of Joseon where the Buddha's law or Buddha's teaching got almost disappeared. Most of them burnt or most of them were turned down to ashes. Only the basic structure was left. So you should always try to pass down the proper teaching in areas where it's absent or in areas where it's regressing. So all the time, prayer, so all the time prayers like those words which are like gems, they should always be spread. So at the basic level, you can comfort, and on a little bit higher level, you can give up some of your desire. Only if you have the sense of compassion inside of you, your prayers will be being passed down. Buddha's teaching is not materialistic. I wanted to spread Buddhism, but I went there, but there is no temple there, and there is no one there. But so I thought to myself, that's wrong of you to expect those facilities. If you have them, that's fine. But if you do not have them, but that's a matter that's afterwards. Possessing something is not materialistic. I said to myself, when did Jesus build church to spread his teachings? Jesus never built a church. He went to the top of a mountain, he went to the top of a tree, he went to the shore and taught fishermen. He didn't build these grand churches. Even Buddha's teaching is very simple. He just sat under a tree and he just taught everyone out in the street. Nowadays, when we listen to Buddha's teachings, we put on heaters in winter and we put air conditioners in summer. And you don't know how grateful you all should be. I feel so cold. There are some people who complain how cold it is in summer because of the air conditioner. It is not materialistic, but it's a very natural thing. It's not from external appearance, but what's important is from what's inside of you. So when you convert, building a big house, all the excuses. We say that those who cannot work, they complain about their instruments. Those people who cannot cook, they complain how blunt their knives are. Sometimes using your hand can also make a new food or better, more delicious food. So throughout 1 hour of cooking, they complain about their knife.
맨날 머리를 푸시시 하고 다니는 사람이
And also those people who complain about how bad their hair is, they complain it's because of their comb. They could use their finger.
그러니까
So stop giving those excuses.
교화라는 것은 가장 중요한 것이 내적인 충만을 얘기하는 거예요.
Reformation, what's important in Reformation is feeling inner you, feeling
정신적으로
your inner spirit.
안정되게 해줄 것인가? 스승과 제자가 만나는 것도 전부 다 그거로서 만나는 거예요.
How can you make yourself stable? Even teachers and the disciples meeting, they meet through that.
알겠죠? 그래서 여러분들은 이제 본문 듣다가 진옥 선생님이
So those of you,
얘기할 때는
sometimes you listen, and when I say,
그렇게 생각하시오.
when I use a little harsh words, just take as they are. Sometimes when I say in a very soft way, think of it as I am giving you some good things.
내수술을 하는구나 그렇게 생각하고.
And sometimes when I say very strongly, just think that you have some surgery going on, and
그러니까 우리가 구덩이를 이렇게 파면 물이 구덩이 안으로 보이죠, 그죠? 그러니까
when you dig a hole, the water gets stored within the hole.
쌓지는 않죠. 파지.
So those people, when they are trying to trying to make a wall, they do not put soil in it, but they try to dig the hole.
수행은 항상 낮은 곳으로 흐르게 돼 있어. 근데 사람들이 자꾸
They always say you should always do meditation or practice asceticism from the lower regions. The higher your names are, the farther you are going from the nature of Buddhism.
그래서 돌아가신 우리 서경보 박사께서는 앞에 박사학위가 26개인가 있었잖아요.
So Dr. Song, when he died, he had about 27 doctorate degrees in front of him. He had diverse doctorate degrees. Those degrees itself is not teachings of Buddha.
주님은 됐지 스님이면 됐지 그 이상 존댓말이 어디 있냐고 그냥 팔짝 뛰어버렸어.
When you, especially when you talk about Babjang Sunim, when you wanted to give him some title, he said, "What more can you expect?"
법사 이상 제일 높은 것이 어디 있냐고.
He said, "Being a monk is more than enough." And also, Wanyo Sunim, Venerable Wanyo, when you say, "What more can you convey?" in matters like, "What more can you expect?" Rather than being a messenger of Buddha's teaching.
종종 이름 붙었다고 죽을 때안 껄떡거리고 안 헐떡거리고 그렇게 되는 거 아니잖아요. 이름 붙잖아.
Just because you have some title in front of your name doesn't mean at the time of your death you will suffer less. Everything has no use here.
그래 안 그래요? 여러분이 보시를 하고 공덕을 짓는 것도 나는 사실 칭찬하고 싶은 생각이 하나도 없어.
So even your great acts of donation and also virtuous deeds, I do not feel like complimenting you, because if I compliment you, then maybe you'll feel a little happy, and maybe there will also cause some kind of some feelings inside of you, which is maybe not helpful for your meditation or your practice. So I don't want to do that for you.
자기가 보시를 하면서 환희심 나고 내가 욕심을 낮출 수
When
있으면
you
그거
donate
이상 조금 더
your
여지가
feeling
내가
of
관심을
happiness,
끼쳐.
and if you can
그래서
lower
내가
your
욕심이
greed,
있어서 여러분
what
배워먹으려고
what
내가
more virtuous
칭찬을
deed
한다.
can you expect from it? If
어떻게
I
그렇게
if I
지금
compliment
못되게
you
생각해?
a
마음도
little,
없어. 그렇게는 안
you know,
하겠지만.
I can say something like, "Oh, you look very ugly, but you have such a great heart.
그렇게는 안
Your
하겠지.
act is different from your appearance." Those kind of sentences or this kind of comments. There's
칭찬한다는
no
자체가
use
그런 일이에요.
to.
이제
There's no
칭찬하는
requirements
것은
for
참으로
compliments.
이 사람이 그 의지력이 약하고 칭찬하는 그 마약을 쓰지
When you
않으면
compliment, it's almost like if you do not use a drug called compliment, and also if his motivation is very less,
오히려 역작용이 난대. 그러니까 그런 것처럼 말이야 마약을
just like the medicine that's used in hospitals, if you use more than a week, you will feel addicted to it.
안 거꾸로지게 좀 만들까 하고 그럴 때 이제 극약 처방으로 하는 것이지 그 칭찬을 할 게 없어. 그리고
At times like this, when I feel that there is absolute need for compliments, at that times we do some kind of compliments. But if you plant a rose, then rose will grow.
내가 뭘 지금 그 아이고 장미를 잘 심었네 그 소리를 내가 할 필요가 뭐 있어.
But
지가 장미꽃
on top of that, what's the need for me to say, "Oh, you planted rose, oh, the rose is planted very well"? If you are happy by planting the rose and by looking at the rose that's grown, then that's more than enough, isn't it? I am I'm not joking here, but I think that's actually idea that I believe in.
칭찬을 좀 해주시고 그러시죠. 그거는 이제 내가 욕심이 있어가지고.
When you ask me for my compliments,
종갓 칭찬을 다 하면.
then you can use at the time when you have greed to overrule that person, then you can give him compliments, or else compliments are of no use.
마음의 잘못을 줄이면 좋은 성품이 자라납니다.
If you reduce mistakes from your heart, then your good nature will arise.
시소 있잖아요, 그죠? 시소.
You know, in this seesaw,
여기 보이소. 시소가
look here.
여기 올라가잖아요, 그죠?
If you press this part, the other part goes up.
이게 이쪽이 내려가면 여기 푹 올라오잖아요, 그죠? 근데 이게 두 개가 시소는 동시에는 못 올라가. 수리하려고 뜯어가지고.
If you press one part, the other one goes up, but you cannot press. Both parts cannot rise together. Both parts cannot go down together.
그와 같이 우리가
Likewise,
마음이 많다 그런 것은 선행은 착한 마음은 다 주저앉아 버렸다는 뜻이에요.
likewise, if you have a lot of bad sentiments, that means good virtues have decreased. If you have a lot of good feelings, that means we have your sense of bad feelings or bad virtues have decreased. But like seesaw,
좋은 마음, 나쁜 마음 이쪽에 50건, 저쪽에 50건 똑같이.
but like seesaw, it means you have half and half of both virtuous feelings and also the opposite bad feelings.
그 우리가 내가 선한 마음을 얼마만큼 내느냐, 또 악한 마음을 얼마만큼 내느냐.
So how much of good virtues or good nature do you increase, and how much of bad deeds do you increase? If you know one side, then you can know the other. It's very simple.
여기 얼마죠?
How much is here?
수학 잘한다.
2.
가로로 해놔도 알 수 있죠, 그죠?
Even if you put it blank or in brackets, you understand, you know. If you know the two other theories, two other letters, then you know what's the answer.
그 사람 선한 행을 하는 것이 5다.
So if his virtuous deed was 5,
얼마가 돼야 10이 될까요?
what bad deeds does he require in order to become 10? 5.
그렇게 항상 여러분이 더하기 빼기를 해봐야 됩니다.
Like this, you should always do
내가
addition
네
and
시킴이 얼마나
subtraction.
많은가.
How much of selfishness do I have?
여러분이요, 옷을 많이 샀는데 어디 입고 나가려니까 입고 나갈 옷이 없어.
You bought a lot of clothes, but you want to go somewhere. But when you look at it, there's no clothes for you to wear. You look for the reason behind it, and because the grandmother living in your neighborhood, you give her one, and also the other one you gave to your neighbor somewhere else. And when you want to go out, you have nothing to wear. Likewise, this kind of good deeds, it's great. But if you have so many clothes to wear when you want to go out, then it's awful. Especially if you have like a main coat or the scarf made of foxtail. It's awful.
아, 지사님은 왔구나. 지사님은 행진을 갔다 둘이야. 그러니까
So all the feelings of selfishness and those kind of feelings that's arising from our heart, we should always try to reduce them.
줄여야 돼. 그건 완벽하게 다 사라져 버린 것이 부처님인데.
It's just different. Like how much more have you reduced?
좀덜 줄인 사람.
But from my opinion, those who reduce a father more, they look more like a human being. If they have tried a little to lessen their greed, then they look more like a human. But those who have failed reducing their greed but let out their greed out in open, they look like pigs and dogs. Those people will say they're worse than animals. Do I have to remove those very things? But they're already out, broadcasted, so just leave it.
이미 나가버렸으니까 내 번째도 버려.
Before when I was on live TV,
원래 방송을 내가 생방송을 전에 해보니까
there's nothing like NG there, so it's just so happening. So if something goes wrong, then everything's out there clearly.
잘못되면 무조건 사고야. 그냥 나가버리다. 그냥 나가버리고.
But there's something good about it. When you do recording, sometimes it might take 2 to 3 hours. Like for 20 minutes on TV, you do 2 to 3 hours of recording. But live, when the time comes, you end it. So, as a monk, I think I'm the only one who ran on the Mapo Bridge. It's more than 1.7 kilometers I ran because I was late for live. So I arrived there 3 minutes prior to the live. I was sweating very bad. I thought I could set a world record if I run like that in marathon. I ran very hard. I looked in the watch, but I thought I had no chances, so because of heavy traffic. So I told the cameraman, please do not put on TV for 10 minutes. So if the camera doesn't picture me, then it seems like I'm absent there. So I set myself and once one person was a panel and he forgot what to say. And I looked at him and he was very shocked. At times like that, you need to help him. So when it's on live, you should always listen to also those who's around you, and you should also follow what he or she says. when the person is stammering, then you should be sitting there together and talk to him about it. And if you and those people who had those kind of senses, then the producers, they keep calling him. And if you're not good, then they stop calling you, just like me. So the most effective way to spread Buddha's teaching is to convey the hurts. So in Buddhism, what's the most important reformation is changing the hurt of people. So throughout the world, I have a license that no one else has. No one has in this whole world, but I have it. I have the degree of curing hurt or operating hurt. I do perform on hurt, and sometimes I say this is cancer, so I give them a prescription and I try to remove it. But sometimes people, they claim as if it's their property, they try not to remove it. Then I do perform surgery on them and I just remove it. So changing the hurt into a virtuous hurt. So in areas where Buddhism has entered, then they stop having wars and violence. Also, Tibet was once an area where they were carnivores. Before Buddhism spread it in Tibet, they would steal all the goods of people who move in that area. And after Buddhism got into Tibet, people changed. Now, a lot of people have changed, reformed in the way that even if you hit them, they would not even complain. They have 6 million population, but China killed almost like 2 million, but still people do not complain. Look at their evidence. The Buddha's teaching changed everything. The most important thing is changing the heart. We call that spread of Buddhism, conveying the teachings of Buddhism, those virtuous hearts. So things like meditation is also a good invention. It's the best invention of human in that reduces distraction of heart. The best way to reduce greed is donating. The best way to remove crimes is to abide rules and laws of Buddhism. All of these are in the 6 parameters. They are all ways to change heart. There's nothing special in them. How did Amitabha Buddha attain? 달라이라마 같은 분이 누가 그러더라고. 달라이라마 왕궁에 이제 배로 간다니까 뭐라 그러냐고. attain his 42 powers. He got them through all his 42 realizations. At once they were talking about Dalai Lama's palace, and they expected, since it's palace, they expected it to be very grand, but it's nothing there. So they passed through the reception, the security check, and they were sitting there, and he asked me, "Is this Dalai Lama's palace?" And I told him yes, and he was like, "Is it this small?" And I told him, if it's big, then they need to pay a lot for the heating in the winter. But after we went into the reception, and after we came back, he said all of my expectations or thoughts have or disappear. I thought he'll be sitting in some place where it's grand and he'll be looking down at us. But when I entered, I expected Dalai Lama to have this kind of dominance power over us and not even welcome us. But when Dalai Lama bowed down on us and welcomed us, my whole of my expectations changed.
높은 양반이니까 막 굉장히 그것을 그렇게 된 모습을 장엄이라 그런단 말이에요, 그죠?
We call that grandeur. Those kind of acts we call grandeur. Not something where they have applied a huge, very dark lipstick,
립스틱 짙게 바르고 그게 아니고.
but you're grand, you're magnificent with the original power.
그죠? 원력으로.
Having a big temple or having a grand temple is not magnificent.
만들었다. 그건 장엄이 아니야. 진짜 장엄은 원력으로 중생을 위하고자 하는 원력으로서 장엄이 되는 거야. 그렇게 돼야 장엄이 진짜 장엄이 되지. 무슨 껍데기로 장엄을 하려 그러면 그건 뭐
If you try to attain grandeur through outer appearance, it doesn't work out. Even the Shah Jahan, who built Taj Mahal in India, he built the grave in such a grand manner. It only causes me a little smile. He made about 40,000 people work, and since in order to recreate something like that, he cut everyone's hand. I lost all of my appetite when I heard that.
내면으로 선심으로 중생을 위하고자 하는 자비심과 보리심으로 충만해지면서 선심으로 가득 차고 그런 일을 하기 위해서 내가
If you are filled with those kind of feelings or aspirations to help others, and even if you do not then you don't have to put on makeup, you don't have to wear good branded clothes, but you will look magnificent yourself. If you have so much grit inside, but even if you're wearing a diamond ring or wearing a mink coat, with wearing makeup or sticking something on your face, you look very shallow. But if you do not have a power inside of you, if you do not have a compassion, if you don't have money, and when they go around in a very dirty or filthy, I hate looking at them.
복조가리 하나도 세속 복조가리도 안 짓고 그걸 꽹해가 다니는 사람들만 더 배기 싫어 그냥.
So you should try to work on your inner powers yourself.
여수를 뭐 길을 도로를 크게 내고 그건 전부 다 욕망의 도로들이야. 혼잡의 도로고 산만심의 도로고 번잡심의 도로이지만은 그런 것보다는 여수 사람들이 서로를 위해서 노력하는 모습이
If there is some people in Yasu who try to work for others, I have earned a lot of money, but I have earned for Yasu, so if I can contribute some of them as a scholarship for students, how nice would it be? if they have that kind of feelings,
이런 생각이 있어요.
if there's like 10 or 20 of them with those kind of things in Yasu, then how will everything change? Maybe throughout Korea, although we look like we don't have like such a broad land or we don't have such a great streets, but people will look up to Yasu, saying it's a great place to live in.
이렇게 될 거 아니고.
You want me to end?
말 끝내라고? 예? 그래서 마음을 갖다 선심으로 이렇게 바꾸어 나가는.
So act of changing your heart into something that is a little more spiritual, it's very important. It's not materialistic, so it's for sure that you cannot go out and buy it from market. So those things like you have to pay money to go to heaven. But listening to Buddha's teachings and if you can contribute some money in order to make a prayer for others to listen, that what's more greater than this? So even those prayers, I do not tell you from one, like you don't have to pay $60 for listening to this prayer, but from one day I started telling you can pay as much as you can in order to contribute. It's fine even if you pay, even if you don't pay. But at times like this, you don't have to eat. At times, you don't have to eat 3 meals a day. Sometimes, even 2 meals a day is more than enough. So I think even those monks living here, even if they are not able to eat 3 meals a day, I don't think they have so much complaints. It doesn't cost so much for a single body to live. If you want to become a mayor, then you need a car and you need some money. But if you just try to live in a simple life, then it won't cost you a lot. Like I don't smoke, I don't drink, so it doesn't cost me money to buy alcohol or cigarettes, and it doesn't cost me money to buy a car, so it doesn't cost me a lot. Even the clothing, since you provide me, I don't have to spend my money, and also I don't have my money to spend. It doesn't cost so much for a person to live before he goes into a coffin. So the aggression that distances yourself from all the agony of life, and also compassion that provides spaces for everything, and also wisdom that provides you the basis for the understanding. You need to concentrate on these three. The kind of sense that I should not live like this in this consciousness. You should have the kind of feeling to stay away from them. That you should have this kind of bodhisattva, that you should live for all other sentient beings. This kind of, if you grow this kind of motivations for life, concentrating on these things is important. Let's end today's teaching here. I think I am having a little cold. My throat is hurting a little.
자꾸 따끔따끔 아파. 그래서 좀 쉬어서 빨리 좀 끝내려고.